2 Kings 17. Can I pull up? Share this with people?
Yeah. I think this is very important for people to understand the background of the Samaritans. I take my tour groups up to meet the Samaritans, go in the museum, and this is one of the features. Yeshua spoke to the woman at the well, a Samaritan.
Right. And now look, today there's something like 600 Samaritans. In the time of Yeshua, there were 1 million Samaritans. Right? They were a large area, a large contingent of people who dominated what's today northern Israel, the area of Samaria, the so-called West Bank, which Jews called Judea and Samaria. So 2 Kings 17 describes the exile of the 10 northern tribes. They're taken as captives into another land. And why did the Assyrians do this? Their policy was, it's really hard to control people who are far away from you because they'll rebel. And how do you prevent them from rebelling? You take the people from take a city, Beit Shan, and you go and you plant them somewhere surrounded by enemies. Well, who are they going to rebel with, right? They're not going to join up with the next town because they don't even speak the language of the next town. They don't have the same religion as the next town. Mm-hmm. It was divide and conquer. That's what the Assyrians did. So the Assyrians took the 10 tribes, scattered them all over what today is Iran and Iraq, and possibly parts of Syria. And in their place, they took people from 5 different regions, which were also in those areas.
And this is all stipulated in
It's described in detail in 2 Kings 17. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let me just read you the key part here where he says, verse 24, and the king of Assyria of 2 Kings 17, verse 24, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, meaning in the
replaced them.
Right. Yeah. Why did he do that? Well, because
running their businesses.
Right. We want to be able to tax people, so we can't just have a bunch of empty cities. Mm-hmm. And we want to have, let's be really honest, we want to have human shields. So when the Egyptians invade Assyria, they've got to go through these villages that are garrisoned by people from these 5 cities who are now in Samaria instead of back in Babylon and other places, right? So it has 2 functions there. One is for taxes, and one is it's a human shield. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared the Lord. And in Hebrew it says Yehovah. Therefore Yehovah sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the God of the land. Basically what they're saying is...
Now these are pagans that have been moved in.
Oh yeah, pagans from
They
Cutha
don't know
and
the God of the land, so to speak.
Right, and their thought is, it's a very common pagan thought. Pagans... and even if you go, for example, today, and I don't mean this to insult anybody, if you go today to India, they'll say, yeah, all gods are real. We just worship this one particular God, or maybe 2 or 3 gods, right? But they don't deny that Jesus is a God, and that Allah is a God, and that whoever, like I don't even like Buddha's a God. They don't have an issue with that. They just say we just don't worship Buddha. We worship our gods. So that's the way they were thinking is, well, why are these lions attacking us? Why were the lions really attacking them? Well, 1, they were sitting, and 2, the cities had been abandoned for some period of time. And so lions took over the place. More like in Israel, it was more like, mountain lions, right? It's not African lions, right? Mm-hmm. Big bobcats thing, right? But they're being attacked by these wild beasts. Why? Because they sinned and because the area had been abandoned, right? They're moving into places that maybe nobody lived for a few years, and they're taken over by wild animals. So they say, oh, we know why this is happening. We better worship the God of the land. Who's the God of the land? We don't know. We came into some foreign country called Samaria, called Israel. So what happens? Long story short, the king of Assyria commands that one of the priests of the 10 tribes is sent back to teach these Gentiles how to follow the God of the land. Right. Who is this priest? He's one of the wicked priests that got the 10 tribes exiled in the first place. Uh-huh. And we're told earlier in Kings, in 1 Kings 11, we're told that this is the sin of Jeroboam, that the 10 tribes take priests who aren't from Levi, who aren't from Aaron, and they anoint them priests. They're priests in the Catholic sense.
The lowest people.
Well, they're not from the line of Aaron. A biblical priest has to be from the line of Aaron. And they took just anybody who they thought was worthy of being a priest, and they called him priest. So this is one of the priests who ends up teaching the Samaritans how to follow the Torah. Well, there are Samaritans there till this day. Now, in the story here in Kings, it says in verse 28, it says, then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear Yehovah. Howbeit, Every nation made gods of their own and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made. Every nation's in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Sukkot Benot. What's Sukkot Benot? That was the god they worshipped back in Babylon. Right. In other words, the early Samaritans did something the modern Samaritans say they don't do, and I believe them. Early Samaritans, what they did is they had two gods they worshiped. The god of the land, so the lions don't attack us, and their native god from back in their home country, where they came from. So Babylon, they made Sukkot Benot. The men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima. The Samaritans, in ancient times, he tells me, this Samaritan leader, Binyamin Tzedakah, he's a great scholar. He says that we never called God by his actual name, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay, I believe him. Why do I believe him? Because Josephus Flavius, the Jewish historian in the first century, confirms this. He actually confirms about how when this whole story of the Maccabees, which became Hanukkah, is the Jews were rebelling against the Greeks, the Seleucid Greeks. And so the Seleucid Greek governor started persecuting the Jews. And the Samaritans write to the governor and they say, why are we being persecuted? They send this to Antiochus. They say, why are we being persecuted? We're not even Jews. We're just foreigners in this land. Can I read you that? What Josephus writes?
I think this is very instructional.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're broadcasting to Bible students out there. So the more that you fill in,
well, you will find out really soon that this is key information.
Right.
Key information. Because where does Yahweh come from? Yahweh purportedly comes from the Samaritans. We'll find that out in a few minutes.
Okay.
If we get to it, hopefully, if we have time. This is Josephus Flavius, Antiquities of the Jews, written in the first century, Book 12, section 258. So they sent ambassadors, meaning the Samaritans sent ambassadors to Antiochus in an epistle whose contents are these. So we have a letter that the Samaritans sent sometime around 168 or 175 BC, sometime in that period, to Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And by the way, the Seleucid governor, or the Seleucid king, our emperor, his name was Antiochus Epiphanes. What does Epiphanes mean? It means the one who reveals himself. So he claimed to be a god, Antiochus. Right. So they write to Antiochus an epistle whose contents are these. To King Antiochus the god, Epiphanes, meaning the one who reveals himself. A memorial from the Sidonians who live at Shechem, meaning straight off they're saying we're actually not Israelites. We just live here. Our forefathers, upon certain frequent plagues, mentioned in 2 Kings 17, and as following a certain ancient superstition, had a custom of observing that day, which by the Jews is called the Sabbath. In other words, what they're saying is we only worship Shabbat because we were attacked by lions. And it was the Jewish superstition, and this isn't really something we believe in, we're just doing it. Now look, I'm not saying the Samaritans today believe this, but according to Josephus, this is a letter that was sent sometime around 168 BC. And when they had erected a temple at the mountain called Gerizim, though without a name, they offered upon it the proper sacrifices. What does that mean without a name? So what that means without a name is that it's not ignorance. It's actually very deliberate. The temple in Jerusalem is referred to as the place Yehovah chose to put his name. The place, it's also called the place Yehovah caused his name to dwell. And they're telling us in around 168 or 175 BC, we have a temple Gerizim, which follows the sacrifices of the Torah, but we don't call the name of the God of Israel upon this temple. Because it's not the place he put his name. They understood that. Give them some credit that they understood that.
Yeah.
Meaning they understood Jerusalem was the place where God put his name forever. Now, upon the just treatments of these wicked Jews, those that manage their affairs, supposing that we were of kin to them, in other words, your governor who thinks we're Jews, doesn't know the difference between Samaritans and Jews, and practice as they do, make us liable to the same accusations, although we are originally Sidonians, as is evident from the public records, meaning you can check in your own records to see we're foreigners in the land of Israel. We don't come from here. We were brought from some other land. 2 Kings 17. Verse 261 in Josephus here. We therefore beseech thee, our benefactor and savior, referring to the king, to give order to Apollonius, the governor of this part of the country, and to Nicanor, the procurator of your affairs, to give us no disturbance, nor to lay our charge what the Jews are accused for, since we are aliens from their nation and from their customs, right? We're just doing the Sabbath and sacrifice thing because there was a superstition by our ancestors when we were attacked by lions, but we're not Israelites. And then they say, but let our temple, which at present has no name at all, be named the temple of Jupiter Hellenius.